coaching. Kunoa coaching.
Well, welcome to the Kunoa podcast today, everybody. We've got Dan with us. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm really excited to have Dan on today because we're going to talk about all kinds of different, what would you call it, Dan? So the types of, it's not coaching, is it? What would you call all the different things that you do?
So it's more consulting and it's a mix of coaching and intuitive readings as well. So it kind of mixes both kind of the conventional coaching, kind of intuitive readings and strategic coaching as well. So there's no word, maybe I should create one, but it's kind of the nexus of those three disciplines.
You have to create a new market for yourself.
I'll have to, yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to give people an overview of how you've got where you have? Because this is a really interesting place to be, I suppose, when we end up talking about it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting journey because I'm intuitive now, but when I started off, I did engineering at school. I did electronic engineering. I went into banking. So it's very much left-brained, analytical, doing lots of Excel spreadsheets and kind of very numerate. And that was my background. But it was when at 16 years old, I read this book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And I just had this real spiritual experience. It was just an experience of like being at one with everything, like hearing the birds from far away, like it was just a moment of, I don't know, spiritual experience. And that kind of fueled my journey. So it's kind of, I took these parallel journeys during life. So one, I was at home, I was studying spirituality, reading lots of books and metaphysics. And then on the other hand, I was doing computer science in my degree in engineering. And then I went into banking and then moved into strategy consulting. And I love both because I really loved, it's funny because I started doing engineering and I wanted to move into tech, but then I ended up going into banking instead in finance. But what I loved about it, I really enjoyed businesses and working with businesses, seeing how they grow, kind of seeing how they get funded, seeing which ones do well, seeing which ones people invest in. But then there was this whole business side, which I really enjoyed. I touched on a bit of leadership as well, more later in my career. And then I had this spiritual side where I was just learning about how metaphysics and doing a lot of meditation, yoga, and that kind of stuff. And then I guess it culminated in about 5 years ago, where suddenly because I've been doing meditation for about, let's say, I think it was 8 years, almost every day for at least an hour, my intuition just really skyrocketed. And I just started working with, I've been studying the archetypes. And I had another kind of peak experience where I just started tuning into archetypes. So archetypes are, they're basically the forms or characters that exist in civilization. So the king, the magician, the warrior, the lover, the princess, the prince, all of these characters that we're very familiar with in story, fairy tale, in branding, in movies, like all of these characters that exist in us, and they influence us on psychological levels. And it was Carl Jung who studied the archetypes and brought about archetypal psychology. And he had these strange dreams and kind of communicated with the archetypes. So I had this kind of experience where suddenly I could start communicating with archetypes, and I was able to do readings for other people. So that just opened up, and this was like, 5 years, but really 2018 onwards. So this whole other side opened up around, and I was able to use that to help people and businesses essentially. So that's a short story of where I am.
Wow, an hour a day meditating for 8 years.
Yeah.
How do you fit that in? I don't know, if someone said to me, can you find an hour a day? I'd be like, where do you want me to get that from? How do you find that?
I guess you get used to it. I used to wake up at 6:30 with the alarm. Now I just wake up anyway without it. But I just loved it. I did Dr. Joe Dispenza, his meditations, and they're just so inspiring. Like and the shifts that you get are so amazing that it was basically worth it. Like it just makes such a huge difference to my day to do it. So yeah.
How would you kind of explain the difference between when you started meditating and 8 years later? What's kind of the mindset shift there?
So I think at the beginning, I did a lot of guided meditations. They were not as scientific, so I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of going along. And the difference now is so when you're first meditating, your mind goes everywhere and it's kind of difficult to meditate at first. But now it's like you start to sense energies. So I work with the chakras, so you can sense every time I do meditation, I can sense the energies, my energetic field growing stronger. Like sometimes you get orgasmic like sensations in your body. So, and what it does, it actually helps you become more empathic with other people. So some people are natural empaths where they can be with people, they can pick up the feelings of other people, or when you walk in a room and people have had arguments and you can feel that energy. That's what it brings. It helps you become more empathic, more in tune with other people, and that's what I've experienced. And this is, as I said, I was very technical, very much in my head, not very empathic at all. So it's really brought that shift from being very technical to, I guess, being more holistic as a person and just having that emotional side and emotional component in life.
I'm quite naturally empathic, and I wish I could dial it back.
All right.
So that I didn't get everybody's emotions all the time, because it's quite difficult when, if you know somebody's had an argument, or somebody's in a bad mood and they're just emanating this energy, and it's so hard just to ignore it.
Yeah, I understand, because it's funny, because before I used to meet empaths and think, what the hell are you talking about? like I had no idea. I was just like, just pull it together. And now that actually is one consequence. I've become more attuned to energy. And then when you become more attuned, sometimes I get that experience where you're picking up energies and you're like, why am I feeling pissed off for? And it's like, oh, it's not even my emotion at all. So I totally get that. Some of my clients are even more like, they're so influenced by everything that they find it hard to function. But yeah, I totally get that. And that's also another skill, like really learning to to manage, deal with those emotions as well.
It's a never-ending journey, isn't it, when we're learning this stuff? So I wanted to talk about so you do readings and healing and beliefs clearings.
Yeah.
And they're probably the more common ones that people might know about, but there's theta healing, ancestral clearing. What are those two about?
Yeah, so theta healing is really about belief clearing. So what happens is, as a practitioner, I go into theta wave brain state, which is basically when you go to sleep. So when you close your eyes, you go into alpha as your brain closes down. Then theta is the brain wave between closing your eyes and deep sleep, which is delta. And theta allows you to tune into more guidance. So you work with the energy of the universal field, or actually in theta we say the creator of all that is. And it really helps you to, when you work with a person, you essentially work with their beliefs mainly. And we have beliefs on several levels. So we have beliefs that we pick up, that we learn through our lifetime. Then we have beliefs that we've inherited from our parents and our ancestry. And we have beliefs from society, so societal beliefs which influence us. So, for example, there's lots of beliefs from religions that influence us unconsciously. And then you have your beliefs from your soul, so beliefs that carry through from lifetimes. And so it's really about helping people heal on a physical, but actually it's more emotional and spiritual level. So often a lot of our physical ailments are due to emotional or psychological issues. So, and then also just changing beliefs. So if our life is going a certain way, often, usually it's because there's belief systems that we're plugged into. And when we can shift those beliefs, then our life opens up to something different. So that can help in relationships. So people who find they can't find the right relationship, we can use theta to clear that. I've helped people who are stuck in those relationships where you can't leave them, but you can't stay. And there's like some spirit, so almost like soulmate lock, where it's the worst person for you, but you just can't let go. So you can break those links, because there's real kind of spiritual bonds at root, and you have to get into that and break it, so that then they can move on to find the right people for them. So I've done that with people, and they've moved on to great relationships. Helps in business where people find it difficult to make money or attract wealth, and we look at some of the belief systems like money is the root of all evil, or if I get rich, then I won't fit into my family, or loads of different beliefs. But generally around money, relationships, when you change those beliefs, then people's lives change. And I've seen it many times where people's lives do change. And then on ancestral clearing, so that is coming from a Afro-Caribbean background, how I came into ancestral clearing is that I realized that I had a lot of blocks which were not from my lifetime. Like I had this sense of unworthiness when it came to relationships and when it came to money, and they had no relationship to my upbringing. And when I looked into them, they came from ancestry, and a lot of it was from slavery. And using I had an experience from a practitioner where I cleared that, and it was just like all of this grief and pain from the ancestry just went through my body. I just cried, but then when it was released, it like just enabled a whole level of freedom. So I just had to train. I was like, I need to be able to do this and help other people. And yeah, it's just really, really powerful modality, and it helps in any culture. So for people who have had people whose parents or ancestors were in the world wars, and they've carried that that pain, or people who got lost in the war and they don't know what happened to their family members, and that trauma is carried through. So it's really, and this is actually proven by science, that genetic traumas carry through the lifetime. So we've seen this, I think there was a study with descendants of Jews from the Holocaust, where they realized they were carrying a high level of anxiety because of the trauma that was encoded in the DNA. So this has been proven scientifically. And when you can release it, it really enables those areas of life where you're blocked, and even therapy or psychology can't necessarily get there. With ancestral clearing, you're able to break that and free that up. So that's how that works.
So how does theta healing and ancestral clearing, are these types of like almost maybe meditation, where do you kind of does the person kind of relax into a relaxed state and then you kind of talk them through it? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'm in a meditative state. The person is just in a relaxed state. And what we'll find is what will happen is they'll go into, so we help them get access the subconscious, essentially. So in that, and you might access it through various ways. You might have feelings in the body, and then we say, okay, I'm feeling something in my stomach. And we'll say, okay, I'll direct you to go into the stomach. And what are you feeling? And as you tune into that feeling, then some images might come up or some words may come up. And I'll ask you, what does that relate to? And suddenly you have an insight like, I can see this happened when I was 5 years old. My mother told me off when I was crying, and she didn't comfort me. And then we'll look at then as we dig into that, it's like what belief was created at that point in time. And then we look at how does that form throughout life. Or it may be, you might see an image which is not from your lifetime, it may be an image from your ancestors. So for example, actually I did one recently where like I had a fear of losing, and because I also get practitioned on as well, because it's kind of helpful. So there was this fear of loss basically, and I was like, why do I fear losing so much? And when I tuned into it, I just saw an image of my grandfather, who I've actually never ever met, but I've had a sense of him, and I could see he was kind of sitting there upset, and I never, like, this just came from my subconscious, like I had no idea what was going on. But then when you question it, you start to see, this is, so he had that fear, and that fear came from him, not from me. And then when you can resolve that, and it's a bit hard to explain how it works, but in that session we resolve it, and once that's resolved, the energy is released, that psychological block is released, and it opens up new freedoms and new ways of operating and being.
Wow. And like, is there a kind of time scale that it takes to kind of do this, or is everybody different?
So sessions generally about 45 minutes to an hour. So in that, we'll cover quite a lot. Sometimes people need more than one session because we need to work in layers, but that's generally how it works. So yeah, it'll just take 45 minutes to an hour. There's a lot of talking, and then there's just sensing and intuiting, and just seeing what comes up for people.
And can you do this when you're not physically with the person?
Yeah, I do it online.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah, it's funny because since the pandemic, like it has to be all done online. So it's just been quite perfect. Because really, ultimately, and this is in quantum physics, everyone is actually linked on a the universal field. This is the double slit experiment where it shows that consciousness influences matter. So really, on some level, that yes, we have space and time, but there is a universal link between all of us, and we can all tune into that.
Wow. And the body mirror system, what's this one about?
All right, so this is a system of healing which essentially says that everything that's happening in your body, so any physical illness, emotional illness, it just is a reflection of your consciousness. So your body is mirroring what your consciousness is. For example, if you had like, say you had a swollen foot and you couldn't walk properly, like your body is then signaling, so there's something around you not being able to take a step forward, and your body is telling you, I can't, you're not unwilling to take that step forward. Or if people have sore throats, there's something that you want to express that your body is telling you that you're not expressing. So this is the body mirror system, where your body is a clue to what the psychological issue is happening. And then with the healing, you can then understand what that is and then heal that, so that you can basically function.
Does this kind of work the same as the other two, where you're kind of, the other person's in a relaxed state and you're in a meditative state? Is that the same type of thing, or is that different?
It's slightly different. It's more like Reiki.
Okay.
In terms of it's more using more energy, working with the hands. But the important thing is for the client to understand what is called. So really, it's about, as a practitioner, interpreting what the body is saying, so the client understands why a certain physical issue is happening.
And can that be done online as well?
It can, yeah, that can be done online as well.
Do you know, I've seen that. There's a practitioner in Australia, and she does Reiki healings for people around the world, and people have said that it really works for them.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, ultimately we're all connected in some way, so the energy just connects. So absolutely. So
what's this kind of, we're all connected by energy? Where does that come from, and how does that work?
It's so funny. I've got so used to it, I forgot how to explain it. But really, so in quantum physics has shown, basically it's the principle of co-location. So they did an experiment where they had two atoms which are co-joined, and then they split that atom and moved them physical distances apart. And then what they noticed is when they put an action on one atom, say they vibrated that action, the other vibrated that atom, the other atom would vibrate as well. So it demonstrated that even through distance, there is a link between matter. So matter is linked regardless of space and time.
Is all matter linked?
I guess so. I guess we live in a holographic universe. So actually, it's an interesting point. I haven't even looked at that for quite some time. It's all matter linked. I say this, like, what I've seen with healing is the consciousness of one person can influence the consciousness of other person, such that you can heal someone at a distance. So I'm not sure, is all matter linked? In some way, all matter is linked because we're all linked through a field. If that answers your question.
There was something in ancient Egypt about this, where they believed that, I think, and I might be completely wrong, but there was a documentary that was talking about how everybody on the planet's linked in a big energy field, and so you could transfer energy to different parts of the planet because it was all on one big field.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when I do the energetic healing, I can transfer energy from myself to someone else, so that makes sense.
Does that kind of leave you feeling exhausted at the end of any sessions?
It used to, but I think now you just, because energy is linked, and did Einstein say energy is not created or destroyed? You just simply tap in and draw energy in. So it's really a question of energy management. So sometimes if I have a lot of sessions, I am drained, but then I can bring that energy back in. I just tune. Actually, it's funny because we did this. I can't remember what course I did, but we learned how to do this. But for example, I would just tune into a site which has a lot of energy. So I remember I went to Iguazu waterfalls, and it's like an amazing site, and this is in Brazil, and there's amazing energy. So sometimes I just tune into a place where I know there's a lot of energy and just draw it in. So yeah. Can
you do that remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. And,
wow.
It's totally in my imagination, but when I do it, I feel energized. So.
I need to learn this. This is fantastic. I could think about something and get some energy from somewhere then and not be so tired all the time.
yeah. It's a bit of a skill because like sometimes, like there are times when I'm drained and I can't seem to access the energy. But to be honest, it's actually easier if you just go out into nature.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot easier if you just go into nature. And so I went out to the countryside today, and it's actually easy to just go to nature and absorb the energy. Doing it from distance is possible, but it's just more difficult at times.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Go out into nature, and the best thing I've found is walking barefoot on the grass.
Oh yeah. That's great.
That was one of my old. She used to do a lot around healing, and she said whenever you feel a bit de-energized, go outside and walk barefoot on the grass, and you'll kind of start to absorb energy from nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Or lie on the grass too.
Yeah. You're listening to the Kuinua podcast. If you want to ask a question to our experts, just go to kuinuacoaching.com and you will find the link to the podcast where you can leave us a voice message or send us an email, and we will ask your question direct to the expert. That's kuinuacoaching.com. Kuinua Coaching is set up to offer mentoring, coaching and courses in leadership, negotiation and soft skills. If you're interested in finding out more about what Kuinua Coaching has to offer you, you can get in touch via Facebook, Instagram, you can type Kuinua into Google, you can email us on kuinuacoaching@gmail.com or go to our website at kuinuacoaching.com. That's kuinuacoaching.com.
Yeah.
More body area to get more energy from. I don't know how it works. Do you get more energy that way if you lay on it? I suppose you might do.
What I do, I find I do, yeah. Because I think maybe it's, I don't know if it's, maybe it's just from the energy system, you just, more contact with the body and the earth.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to test it. I think it probably works actually. So what are the kind of, if somebody was to kind of try this out, what are going to be the top benefits for them to try out these different types of healing that you do, and how would they know which one they wanted to go for?
So the benefits are, it depends what you're up to. So there's going to be the physical healing. So that's going to be dealing with emotional issues or physical issues. But this is not a substitute for medicine at all, I'm just saying, but it can help in various circumstances. So if it's a physical issue, then that would be more body mirror system of healing or theta healing. But also beliefs. So if you're basically, you've got experience where you've been trying to accomplish something for quite some time, trying to be successful, and you feel stuck, and conventional coaching doesn't seem to work. Like there's some block, but you can't access it. And we've all been there where, like, you're smart, like it seems obvious, but for some reason you just can't make things work. Maybe you're procrastinating, maybe there's an unconscious behavior. But what we can do is really get to the source of that, which is, it could be, and it really doesn't matter ultimately what modality we use. It's more just the intention, because like when I work with clients, I'll just know the right modality to use anyway. But really it's getting to the source of that. So it could be ancestral clearing. Maybe you're experiencing a pattern from your ancestors, which is causing you to sabotage. It could be something from a belief from your childhood. It could be something you've inherited from society. So we have a lot of societal beliefs that impact us. A lot around money, a lot around wealth, a lot about not feeling that we deserve wealth, a lot around being afraid to speak out and speak our truth. And in business, a lot, especially in business, there's so many ideas of how one should act and how, like even in marketing, sales marketing, there's always like, this is the right way to do it. So people are always telling us how we should run our business in some way. And ultimately, it's about getting to your own intuition. So actually, this is what leads to archetypes, actually, in terms of we're all encoded with a set of archetypes, which is unique to us and makes us unique. And we can understand that these serve as intuitive guides for ourselves as well. So ultimately, the work that I do, I guess you could say, is helping people release all of the blocks that are getting in the way, and then tapping into their true essence, so they can use their own intuitive guidance and make their own decisions, but from a position of power. And essentially, we live in a world where there's so much influence from others, it can be difficult to know ourselves. So that's really it, ultimately.
That's something that I think is a massive topic, especially that I've talked about before, because there's so many things that society puts on you, and there's so many, gender beliefs or cultural beliefs and that kind of thing. By the time you've formed a belief system, and even if you're trying to look at your own beliefs, it's really, really hard to figure out where these beliefs come from, because you can't actually, if you think about it, get to a supporting bit of evidence. It's kind of all based on assumption. And then you've got to kind of try and, as a leader, we're always talking about being authentically you and not being somebody that you don't want to be or that you think you should be. But actually, how easy is it to be your own true self when you're just surrounded by all these different belief systems that you never created? They were just put upon you from, a child or even before.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you're empathic, as you were saying, then it can often be even more difficult because our energy systems are so porous then that you're being influenced by these beliefs and energies and emotions that are not yours. Um, so absolutely. So, and that, I think part of our, I guess I say mission, or part of our process of discovery is actually understanding who we really are and what our beliefs really are. And then to finding that authentic self.
That's one of the things that we've talked about in terms of figuring out who you are. And figuring out who you are sounds really straightforward, but actually it's really difficult. If you want to say like if you say who am I, people say what their job title is, or they might tell you something else, but it's hardly ever when you say, oh, who are you, that they give you kind of who they actually are. It's really strange that it's kind of when you say who are you, it's kind of what do you do and what your title is rather than who are you as a person, because it's more interesting to know the person.
Yeah, and there actually is a lot of depth that you can go into in who you are. So when I work with people discovering their archetypes, often people find like the hidden genius and what I say superpower, but not in kind of the superhero superpower, but actually just like a talent which is so unique to you and no one else has it. And I think that's actually the beauty of understanding who you are. And I think everyone can benefit from that. So even when people who know who they are, like there is, I think there are always depths to go to realizing who you are. And I think understanding your inner genius is one of the key things that a lot of people don't actually understand, because we're not really taught to tune into that and to key into that. So like I can see from my journey of self-discovery, but also others, like helping them understand their genius has just been like, it's just fascinating to really understand how amazing we are as human beings. I think that's the key thing about authenticity. It's not just kind of speaking your truth and understanding what your opinions and goals are. It's really, who are you at your core? Like, what do you bring into the earth? What is it unique about you that is just so amazing?
If someone wanted to start doing that, how would they begin on that journey?
Well, when I say obviously work with me, but there are other
Obviously.
archetypal consultants out there. There are other archetypal consultants, but really the work I do is really helping people to understand the archetypes. So archetypes are really, it's kind of like personality profiling, but way more individual and way more unique. Because personality profiling is just a way to kind of match people into streams of personality, but we are at our core, we are so unique that only gets you somewhere, and it's really useful. But when you do the deeper work of understanding your true core, when you do it on an individual level and work out your own unique archetypes, the own facets of you, that's where that's what I do. That journey helps people really step into their power. So I worked with entrepreneurs who've gone from like really understanding how they make money. So going from being entrepreneurs who are okay, they do well, but suddenly like they trigger something and their level of success just increases, because then they stop trying to model other people and they just bring out what's in them outside, and that has a huge impact. I've seen it so many times. It's just, and it really does make the difference, basically. And it's success. And when you find your own path of success, it's just freeing, because you're no longer trying to model other people. You're just being yourself, and you're kind of in sync, and things are happening.
I've spoken to a lot of people recently that have kind of said, I'm afraid to say what I really think. And if I say what I think on LinkedIn or something, because, it's all social media, but if I say what I think, then people won't like me and I won't get business and I won't get clients. And I just kind of think, well, if I say what I think and people like it, then they like it. And if they don't like it, then maybe it's not right for us to work together, because we maybe wouldn't get on ethically or something like that. Because there's this thing where people want to please everybody and they just want to appear vanilla. And so they're not causing any trouble, as well, in inverted commas, causing trouble, and they're not rocking the boats. But I think that can potentially be, it could maybe backfire in a way that you're then not appearing as an actual 3D person. You're just appearing as a cardboard cutout of your actual self.
Yeah, that's quite a difficult one, actually. I think because it's that, in theory, it's that, like, I totally get it, and it sounds really easy in theory. Like, this is something I've struggled with as well, because especially if, like, I mean, my struggle is because I've worked in corporate and being a strategy consultant, you don't want to say something that's kind of alienate your key clients. So I totally agree with that. But then I also think it's saying something that actually makes a difference to other people. And it's, yeah, so it's kind of, what does it have to say? Does it actually benefit people? And actually, yeah, people do want to see who you are, and that also makes a difference. So, for example, when I first kind of started being an intuitive, like, there was a period of time where I kind of hid it, and then I thought, oh, fuck it, I was like, why am I hiding this part? And I just used to share it all the time, and like, some of my friends were like, just so tuned out or whatever. But I think the more I shared it, the stronger I became in that. And now I'm finding clients who love that part of me. So yeah, like, if you reveal yourself, then it's gonna help you find the right people for you. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
There's maybe a difference between corporate and entrepreneurs, because I think in corporate, you don't actually get to choose your clients, whereas being an entrepreneur, you might get to build an audience. And I was reading about a chef who completely is one-sided. I think it's something to do with he doesn't like vegan food or something. And he's said that, and some people really hate him and some people really like him. But he's got an audience, and he's got a huge audience, but it's the ones that support him, even though what he's doing, might come across as being, I don't know, distasteful to people. I'm not sure. And I think that's the way that it's really hard to kind of sit there, and you're looking at what everybody's thinking about you all the time, and you're trying to judge what everybody's thinking about you, which is absolutely impossible. And you're thinking, well, if I said that, what would the reaction be? Whereas actually this chef has gone ahead and he's just said, right, you know what? I don't care about whatever it is, vegans or whatever. And if you want to join me, join me. And if you don't, you don't. And he's got a huge audience now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because actually I quite like vegan food.
I'm not sure if it is vegan food, but it was something like that was really divisive. And I was thinking, well, actually, just by being yourself, you've got a huge audience there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's funny because, like, we say that, but then you might find someone who's totally the opposite of you, who you totally agree with, and they're getting business, but you totally are in opposition with them. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Then there's that aspect of, well, if everyone is kind of shouting about what they're up to, yes, everyone's making business, and yet it's interesting because we're living in a more divisive time, it seems. So there's something great about people just being themselves, and there's something there, and I haven't actually tapped into it because this is quite a different new question for me. But there's something around how do we get on when everyone is with all this division as well? Like, how do we kind of allow people to be and actually listen and be okay with that difference as well?
That's a very mature skill, though. I think that takes a long time to develop to a place where you can be okay with somebody being completely opposite to you.
Yeah, I know.
That's a big one.
This is a journey of humanity. Like, we have to live on the same planet ultimately, so we have to. Yeah, and I think
it's weird because in philosophy we do the arguments. I'll go and I'll do a presentation and say some stuff. Somebody will really disagree with it and give me all kinds of rubbish. But at the end, we walk away and we're friends again, and it's not made any impact on us. I think that happens in law as well. But if you go out of that arena, and we have to, when we're doing that, we have to say, this is what we're doing in this room, because outside of that room, if you said some of these things, people would go absolutely ballistic. Even though they don't really understand it because they're just trying to kind of put their kind of belief onto it. So it seems to me it's really it's so hard to get to a point where you can, and I'm not sure if it's the times that we're in, to get to that point where you can have that discussion and just not rip each other's heads off, basically.
Yeah, I don't know what's going. There's something going on the planet where that's coming up. Yeah, it is difficult. I think maybe this is what we're tasked to do. It's a task to understand we're not the only, like, our opinion is our opinion, and but we're not the only people on the planet. We're not entitled to. Maybe we have a sense of entitlement that just because we think our view is right, that it should be the only view. And maybe it's about understanding that we're not entitled, and there are other opinions, and people are entitled to their own opinions. So I think maybe it's a maturity question, and how we mature as human beings and work together. I think also there is something around, also we have the environment and taking care of the environment. So there is that kind of, we need to come together as human beings, and we need to be able to be each other, like live our separate lives, but also we have a planet to take care of as well. So it's kind of tricky navigating all of those viewpoints. And I think it's really a question of understanding you have the right to express your view, and it's great, and you should, but then also being willing to listen, and also willing to be wrong and willing to, if you're wrong, and to change that as well, and kind of letting go of that pride. So expressing what's really there. And I guess it's a question of consciousness, coming from stepping more into the heart, stepping into more of community with other people, and allowing other people to be them, and allowing yourself to be you as well.
I think that's completely right. I think you've maybe hit the nail on the head there. It's community, and I think community, we've lost the sense of that in the last 20 years or so. And I think that's what, it's very easy to sit in a little box of a house and be angry at everybody, but when you've got a community and you're interacting in it, there's not that much excuse to be angry anymore, because you've got a supportive network of people around you and you're integrated into it. But I think with people moving all over the place and becoming isolated, it's becoming more difficult to kind of have that human connection. And maybe that's what's I mean, this is something that is in artificial intelligence as well, actually, where we become more reliant on technology. We tend to start dehumanizing other humans, and it kind of works in a cycle where we're just not connecting with other people as much anymore.
Yeah, I definitely see that, actually. And I think being of a generation where, like before, before smartphones, I think there is, I don't know if it's just unique to our generation, but I can definitely see the trend and seeing the pull of technology to be dehumanizing. Yeah, and I think that's actually why I think a lot of the work that I do is very individualistic, is very human. And I think that is something we can't lose, because actually what we don't understand is actually our humanity is actually way more powerful than our technology. Like I was talking about we're all linked, and when I do healing, you actually understand the power of humanity. You understand we're all linked. We understand we can tune into each other, and we don't actually need to be present, but it helps to be present. Because especially if you don't have that, if your consciousness if you're not empathic, where you can sense people, like online, for example, then we need to be around each other. Like I can tune into people online and sense people online, but being in the same room makes a huge difference. So that's part of our humanity we need to keep and we need to protect, because it actually is our potential. The more we understand our humanity and our collectiveness, the more we understand ourselves, the more actually we better ourselves as human beings. So totally, I think it's funny because I feel like an old man where I really, like, even in the supermarket, I like, I hate scanning my own shopping. I want someone else to do it, so I have a human connection. Like, I don't want to operate the machine. And even I remember going to McDonald's. I hardly ever go to McDonald's, and like I walked in and saw I have to order by machine, and I walk out. I'm like, I'm not interacting with a machine. I want to interact with a human being. So I think we need to take a stand for that.
That's really interesting that you say that. When you realize all the places where humans have been taken out of it, McDonald's, KFC, supermarkets, banks, you used to interact with so many people every day just in shops, and now actually you're just interacting with machines.
And for me, I unless it's really convenient, like ordering something in a smartphone, I prefer to interact with the person.
Wow.
So, and there's times where I just refuse. Like I'm not like I'll spend the extra 10 minutes waiting in the queue for like. I also like to be served, by the way. So, like I got like someone scanning my shopping rather than me doing myself. So, there's probably something to do with it, but I quite like I like having a nice conversation with the cashier, and just like a smile that makes a huge difference.
It does. And like when I'm around people, it kind of powers me up a bit. Like when I'm sat on my own, I'm like, oh, because there's nobody to talk to. It just makes a difference to go out and talk to people, I think, and just learn something new and have a bit of an interaction and find out what's going on in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this pandemic, it really has conditioned us to, it's almost like being, well, I don't know, I've never been kidnapped, but it's a bit of a Stockholm situation where we're so used to it, we've become such hermits that it's almost like there's a danger that we get so used to it that we don't venture out.
Oh yeah.
Interact. I think we really need to learn, like, get back in, as soon as possible, get back into the habit of interacting with others.
I can't wait. There's hugs everywhere when I get out of this house. I'm a hugger.
Great, me too, actually.
We'll have to meet up and have a massive hug and be like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
Well, Dan, we're coming to the end, and I'll say we're coming to the end. We've gone way over time by about 20 minutes, but that's absolutely fine because it's been a great chat. Do you want to? We are going to tag everything below, so you can go straight through to Dan and find out more about all the amazing stuff that he's doing. Do you want to just give our listeners an indication of where they can find you?
Yeah, so my website, danielbrown.uk, so it's Brown with an E. Also on YouTube, actually, also Daniel Brown with an E. Actually, I'm just starting my YouTube channel, so it's just so actually by the time this comes out, there may be quite a few videos on there. That's mainly, and on Facebook, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. So my links will be on this podcast.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you so much for coming on and being a guest. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today.
It's been a pleasure.
You've been watching on YouTube or listening on an audio platform to the Kunua podcast. If you like what you're hearing, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any amazing content, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Kunua coaching.